What? Do you hear? I think he's doing it on purpose. Murray, come on. Hi guys, and welcome back to another episode of Crue Trime. Crue Trime. I need some ideas how to say Crue Trime. If it's your first time around here, welcome. My name is Sarah, and what I do here is tell you a terrible story to ruin your day and put on my makeup at the same time. So if that sounds like fun to you, you're in the right place. So make sure you subscribe, hit the bell notification, and then that way you'll never miss one of my terrible stories. Today's story takes us back to the land down under. Don't worry, I'm not going to be making any attempts to speak in the Australian accent today. Although, it's my favorite. And I had so much fun doing it last time.
Stop it.
The last time that I covered a story from Australia, so you know what? No promises. Also, this story was recommended over a year ago by a lovely viewer named Liz Malloy. I'm working my way through the list, you guys. It's really long. Thank you, Liz. This is the story of Sef Gonzales. All right, we are securing these hairs today. That looks great. Oh, also, if you're interested in any of the makeup that I'm using in today's video, I don't really talk about it as I'm putting it on, but just look down in the description box. Everything is linked, and if it's not available anymore because it's very expired, then I'll link something similar. Okay, let's get started. In the late evening hours of July 11th, 2001, in New South Wales, Australia, just outside of Sydney, police arrived to the home of the Gonzales family, located in North Ryde, a suburb. 20-year-old Sef Gonzales was devastated. He had made a terrible discovery. His entire family had been brutally murdered. Sef told the first responders that he had been out for the night. He had met his friend in Sydney. His friend's name was Sam DeCillo. They met around 8 o'clock that evening. They had dinner at Planet Hollywood, and then they played games at an arcade. And at the end of the night, he dropped off Sam at his house, and then he returned home where he had made this grisly discovery. In the hallway was Sef's father, 46-year-old Teddy Gonzales. He had been stabbed to death. In the living room was his mother, 43-year-old Mary Gonzales. She had also been stabbed to death and her throat had been slashed. In an upstairs bedroom was his younger sister, 18-year-old Claudine Gonzales. Her head had been beaten in severely and she had also been stabbed. Inside the house was a totally blood-soaked scene. Just terrible, you know. It was absolutely everywhere. And there was racist graffiti spray painted on the wall. "Fuck off Asians, KKK" had been written there. Side note, is the KKK in Australia? I didn't know. I thought that was just an American delight, you know.
Disgusting!
Anyways, it looked like this had been a targeted attack, you know. The Gonzales family was from the Philippines. So holy shit, this wasn't just a triple homicide, this was a hate crime. Well, the community, of course, was stunned. So the Gonzales family was pretty wealthy. Teddy was a successful attorney in town. After the 1990 Luzon earthquake in the Philippines, the Gonzales family decided to emigrate to Australia. Immigrate. They left the Philippines, they moved to Australia. So they decided to settle in the quiet Sydney suburb of North Ryde, and Teddy opened up his own immigration law firm. It was a bit of a family business. Mary worked there also as the office manager, and Sef sometimes worked there as he was studying law at the University of New South Wales. At the time that this happened, Claudine was actually a student at a school in Melbourne, and she was just home for the summer. The Gonzales family was close-knit. They were very devout Catholics. Teddy and Mary wanted the kids to grow up to be very successful, and they had high standards and high expectations. Essentially, you know, they were very strict with the kids. Tiger parents, some might say. Particularly with academics. You know, they wanted them to have traditionally successful careers like doctor, lawyer, something like that. Which I guess, not terribly unusual, but also maybe that's just a bad stereotype, you know, especially for an Asian household. Anyways, so after the murders, this left Sef the sole survivor of his family, and he appeared on TV begging for justice. He asked the killers to come forward. That's gonna happen. He also tearfully offered a $100,000 reward for any information leading to, you know, an arrest. He said in this press conference, quote,
"If you were to picture the four corners of the world, in my world, we were the four."
The Gonzales family funeral was actually a triple service. It was held at the Holy Spirit Church, and Sef delivered the eulogy and performed an a cappella song as tribute.
Sorry, I never told you all I wanted to say.
Strange choice. Also very strange performance.
And I know eventually we'll be together one sweet day.
Who am I to say? He also, in the days after the funeral, visited his father's accountant to sort out the details regarding his inheritance, which was big, you know, about $1.5 million. And as a victim of an apparent crime, you know, he was also eligible for an additional $150,000. It turns out that the majority of the finances were being handled by family members back in the Philippines, which, that tracks. Since Teddy was an attorney, he probably had a pretty rock solid, plan in place. Well, Sef was in constant contact with these family members in the Philippines, asking them to send money.
Money, please!
Oh, no, there's no money.
Oh, my bad. No problem.
He had moved out of the house, which was a gruesome crime scene, of course, and he set himself up in an apartment in a nearby neighborhood called Chatswood. The Gonzales home pretty quickly went up for sale on the real estate market. Sef also visited a Lexus dealership in October, and he put down a deposit on a very expensive car, like a $170,000 expensive car. And he told the dealer that he was expecting to be able to pay the rest off very soon once his inheritance was sorted out. Is anyone else seeing these red flags? Just me? Okay. I mean, what if I told you that Sef pawned his mother's jewelry and sold both of his parents' cars for cash? I mean, that's not very cash money of you, Sef. But let's just put a pin in that for now. Okay, so the Gonzales family was very wealthy, as I mentioned, and the investigators assumed that the crime had been a robbery attempt of some sort. But as they looked around the crime scene, they noticed, there wasn't much evidence to support that. First of all, there was really no sign of forced entry. Nothing of value had been taken, including cash that was laying around. The mess in the house actually seemed to be pretty light, aside from the murder scenes and all the blood. Also, Sef's Aunt Emily reported seeing Sef's car parked in the carport. So, the way the house is set up, there's a garage with a door, and then next to it, there's an open carport, and that's where Sef's car was. She said that she had stopped by that evening, around 6 p.m. and rang the doorbell, but nobody answered, which is weird. Sef said that he had worked at his family's law firm that day until about 4 o'clock, but it wasn't clear what he did between that and going out to meet his friend in Sydney. So the police decided they needed to pull that thread a little bit more. So the police asked Sef again about, how that day unfolded for him. Now this is where it starts to get really muddy and confusing, so I'll do my best, but the alibis change a lot. So Sef, and by the way, his name is Sef, not Seth. Sef, with an F. Sef said that his friend Sam had texted him earlier that day to let him know that he was going to be late, so he tried to link up with a different friend, but then he couldn't find him, so then he ended up coming back to the house, and then went on to meet up with Sam. But when investigators mentioned this car sighting, he said that he had actually parked his car and then caught a taxi to a brothel where he engaged in some services, and then he caught a taxi back home and then went out again later that night with Sam, which of course all of this is a lie. He claimed that he didn't want to admit to the brothel because it's embarrassing. Well, it's just a lie is what it is. So the investigators were fucking squinting at Sef. He couldn't keep his story straight. He was acting really weird for somebody whose family had just been butchered. The one sweet day.
Sorry.
Weird. He was also very, very interested in his father's estate and was bragging to anyone who would listen about how wealthy he was or was about to be. And he was just out living his best life, making it rain. Oh, and by the way, his family in the Philippines wouldn't send him any money.
I'll just destroy this office.
Oh, hey!
So he told them he had cancer and needed an operation.
Money, please! Money, please.
They were like, no, dude. Seth had been very cooperative in this investigation. You know, he had even returned to the crime scene with the investigators to sort of reenact what he discovered that night with no emotional reaction at all. He also claimed that he had received a threatening email from someone who claimed to be a hitman. The email said that he was supposed to die that night, but he was lucky that he wasn't in the house. I see what you did there, like blaming it on someone else and then also giving yourself the alibi. I see you, Sef. Well, when the police asked for a copy of this email, he said that it had self-destructed after he read it. Okay.
One sweet day.
Ooh, and this is the best one. A passerby found Sef lying in the street one night in Chatswood near his new fancy apartment. Sef claimed to not remember anything, but he couldn't breathe and he was hurting. You know, he started asking for his father. Once he miraculously started to remember what happened, he said that some people had pulled him into a car and put a plastic bag over his head and then struck him in the head with a piece of wood. He said the kidnappers told him to retract the reward that he had offered. He had no head injury to support this little story, by the way. Well, police started to really look closer. Life in the Gonzales home was very strict. For the kids, at least. You know, Teddy and Mary ran a very tight ship. They wanted their kids to be doctors or lawyers, and they didn't tolerate any distractions. When they found out that Claudine had a boyfriend, they sent her away to live with some family members in Melbourne, you know, so that she could continue high school. Sef was not a terrible student, but he wasn't, you know, on his way to being a brain surgeon. We'll put it that way. What he really wanted to be was a singer, you know, and Teddy and Mary were not into it.
Wanted to say.
Well, they demanded that Sef pursue medical science in some capacity. He enrolled at the University of New South Wales, but predictably dropped out. He later enrolled at Macquarie University to follow in his father's footsteps, you know, enter the family business of law. Oh wait, did I say earlier that he was at a different school? Might have got those backwards. Either way, doesn't matter. Well, Teddy and Mary were totally psyched. You know, Seth had finally gotten his shit together and was doing well. He was a big old liar, okay? He was fully forging his grades. Also, Seth and Claudine were very competitive with each other. Well, with the kind of pressure that they were each under, the easiest way to sort of turn down the heat on themselves was to turn it up on each other. Claudine is the one who found out about these forged grades, and she totally snitched on Seth to their parents. Anyway, the parents were pissed, and they threatened Seth, you know, we're gonna take away your car, which was his prized possession. They didn't do it right away, though. You know, they were giving him until the next semester to, like, turn it around. Before we go any further, I just want to make it clear that there wasn't any abuse in the Gonzales home. What I'm saying is that Seth was an entitled, lying brat, and he was over it, you know? He was sick of not getting exactly what he thought was rightfully his.
Malibu Barbie.
Well, Seth didn't just start out murdering his family. Oh no. Internet records show that earlier that year, in February, June, and in July, just before the murders, Seth researched poison and poisonous plants, and he had emailed suppliers regarding plant seeds that he learned were lethal. In late June, he bamboozled some plant supplier into rush ordering some seeds that were toxic, and he received a shipment of them on June 29th. On July 1st, 2001, Mary Gonzales was admitted to the Adventist Hospital and stayed overnight. She was having extreme abdominal pain and diarrhea. The doctor told her that she was suffering from colitis that was brought on by extreme food poisoning. And of course, They weren't looking for, like, toxic plant seeds. Well, they later determined from her test results that it was inconsistent with food poisoning. Yeah, it was plant poisoning.
You crazy! You crazy!
Well, long story short, they found evidence in the house that linked Sef to not only ordering the seeds, but he had made some kind of poison solution with them, like soaked them in water or whatever, however that works. He also sent anonymous letters to multiple places trying to set up some kind of scheme to blame this poisoning scenario on a food manufacturer. You know, essentially that their products were poisoned. The letters said that, quote, 3 of your products have been poisoned and they are now on supermarket shelves. And this is what you get for treating employees like garbage. Good luck finding infected cans before someone dies. Go to hell. I mean, okay. They found the letters for the poison plants, like with his fingerprints on them or something like that. Like, come on. It's just all so obvious, you know? He wanted his inheritance. He was tired of waiting for it. He wanted to make sure that he got all of it.
Don't I yearn and ache and shop?
So, you know, they all had to die. And here's the funny thing. Well, I mean, it's not funny, but you know what I'm saying. Tag Gonzales totally indicated that Sef, if he was the lone survivor, would get it all. But there was a provision written into the will that said he would be disqualified if he was implicated or responsible for anyone's death. That's really good. That's really good. Okay, make note of that. That's a thing you can do. Plan accordingly. Nearly a year after the murders, Sef Gonzales was finally arrested and charged with the murders. Police had long suspected him, and they were watching him very closely, and once they'd gathered up enough evidence, they figured it out. So what really happened? On July 10th, 2001, Teddy and Mary went to work at the family law firm as usual. Claudine, as I mentioned, was home for the summer, and she just stayed home that day. Sef went to his morning classes at Macquarie University. It was Macquarie. I got it backwards before. He took care of some computer-related tasks, and then he left for the day around 3:30 that afternoon and headed back to the family home where he parked his car in the carport. Claudine sent a text message just after 4 o'clock, presumably her last. Around 4:30 p.m., Sef entered Claudine's bedroom, armed with knives from the kitchen and some kind of bat. He strangled Claudine, and then he beat her about the head with the bat and then stabbed her multiple times. It was the combination of all of the injuries that caused her death. Mary Gonzales arrived home around 5:30 p.m. Before she could remove her shoes and put her handbag down as she normally would, Sef attacked her with a kitchen knife, stabbing her multiple times about her chest, abdomen, face, and neck. The injury to her neck was so severe that her windpipe was cut all the way through. Aunt Emily rang the doorbell around 6 o'clock, and Sef was there but didn't answer. A short time after that, Mary's cell phone rang. It was Teddy on his way home. That call went unanswered. Teddy got home just before 7 p.m., and again, Sef attacked him immediately with a kitchen knife. Before he could take off his shoes and put down his briefcase, he was stabbed multiple times in the same way, and he had wounds penetrating his heart and lungs. And one wound partially severed his spinal cord. The court records say that, quote, vastly more force was used than was necessary. Then Sef collected the murder weapons, changed his clothes, and then got rid of all of it. They never found any of the murder weapons or any of that evidence. He also then spray painted that racist message on the living room. After that, he went out to meet his friend Sam. They enjoyed their night out in Sydney until Sef dropped Sam off around 11:30. Then Sef arrived home and made that emergency phone call. So, holy shit. Not only did he straight up murder his entire family, he did it over a period of hours. This wasn't like some sudden criminal outburst. This wasn't in the heat of passion. He intended to do it, and he had been planning it for months. You know, researching poisons and all that shit to try to kill his mom like 10 days earlier. When the case went to trial, it was actually resolved pretty quickly. It was only about 6 weeks of testimony. although the trial did not begin until the spring of 2004. The Crown focused on the brutality of the crime. You know, all the lies, the attempted cover-up, the duplicity, and the false trails. The defense attempted to say that Sef was suffering from PTSD from the earthquake in the Philippines. Baby. Nobody is saying that shit is not traumatic, but like 10 years went by and then it caused it to kill your family, your entire family? Okay. After the jury deliberated for like less than a day, Sef Gonzales was found guilty on all charges and was later sentenced to concurrent sentences of life without the possibility of parole. Concurrent just means that all the sentences are running at the same time. He is serving his term as a maximum security inmate at Goulburn Correctional Centre in New South Wales, Australia. As I mentioned earlier, the Gonzales home was listed for sale after the murders. Understandably, not a lot of curb appeal in a situation like that. But in October of 2004, prospective buyers from Taiwan made a deposit on the house, and then they found out about the murders only after reading about it in the newspaper. That little snafu inspired some changes in Australian real estate laws, making it illegal to sell a house without disclosing that a murder took place in it. I mean, that's fair, right? That deposit was eventually returned to those buyers, and the home was then later sold in 2005 to a buyer who knew about the crime and scored the purchase $80,000 under the list price. And that is the story of Sef Gonzales. If you want to know any of the makeup that I used in today's look, then look down in the description box because everything is linked. If you have a Crue Trime story that you would like to recommend to me, there is a Google Doc down in the description box where you can give me all the dirty details. I would love to hear from you. Thank you so much for hanging out today and for watching this video. I really appreciate it. If you want to see more videos like this one, then consider subscribing to this channel before you leave today. I upload new videos here on YouTube most weeks, and you can follow me on most of the other socials as well. That is it for now. I will catch you next time in the next video. Bye! All the dirty... Moritz! Shh! Oh, he's fucking with me. Ah, fucking mascara on my nose. Poor me. Murray! July 10th, nope. At a maximum security inmate. Wait. Before he could take off his wounds. Murray, Bubba. Kids these days, man. Brats.